Hey guys, it's me Nicolette Mashile, also known as The Financial Bunny. Welcome to The Financial Bunny TV. Today I want to talk about 4 fees that you're going to have to pay upfront if you are looking to purchase your home, your first property, your investment property using a bank loan. Right. It is very important to know about these upfront fees because you need to plan for them. As I always say on this channel, buying a house is not like buying Colgate at Pick and Pay. You don't just walk in and grab a Colgate and move on to the teller pay and move on with your life, right? Buying a property is a very, very big decision, and well done for making it. And if you're thinking about it, shout out to you for planning ahead so that you have your ducks in a row. Now, the reason I'm doing this video is because I actually get asked this question quite a lot. But recently I was at a session, a financial wellness session for final year med students, and they had a doctor come and speak about what's the life of being an intern doctor, and I was speaking on the finances. So we're bringing it together, you're an intern doctor, you're all of a sudden earning quite a lot of money. What does it look like? And then she pulled me aside after the session and she was like, Nicolette, I am actually in the process of buying my first apartment. And let me tell you, I've received 2 invoices from 2 different lawyers, and something smells here. It feels a little off because I don't know if I should be paying both of these invoices. And I didn't even know that the invoices were coming. Well, that is the reality. If you are going to be purchasing a property in South Africa, you as the buyer are usually the one who is responsible for paying some of these fees. So I want you to actually plan for them. Now remember, none of my videos constitute as financial advice. If you are looking for financial advice, please speak to somebody who is certified and registered with the FSCA. In other words, they need to be an authorized financial advisor or a certified financial planner to give you any type of financial advice. This one here is just for educational purposes. Let's get into the video. So, it is important, number 1, to understand the difference between what is credit and what is debt, but also understand what does buying a property actually mean. And I'll start with the first one. The reason why I say you need to understand so that you understand that there is a credit, and credit is simply just a facility. So when you go to the bank and you apply, and you fill in the home loan application, and they assess your affordability and they assess your status, your credit status, they are basically looking if they can grant you access to a credit line. So they're saying to you, we are granting you a certain amount of money. Obviously, when it comes to secured purchases, it needs to be attached to a certain asset. So that's why you will see that you can't just say to the bank, I want to buy a house, I need 1 million. They need you to actually go and find the house first, have an offer to purchase, submit the offer to purchase with the price, then the bank will say, okay, we are assessing you for this purchase price that you have made an offer to the seller to, right? And the seller has actually accepted. Same with the car. You can't just say, I need a loan of 300,000 before you actually find the car. You have to find the car from the dealership first. Then you sign the offer to purchase from the dealership. The dealership, usually the F&I specialist, will then send that to the bank to try and get you a loan, right? That's usually on secured credit lines. On unsecured credit lines, you can simply say, I need 50,000 Rand. They ain't going to ask you, what are you going to do with the 50,000 Rand? They do not care what you're going to do with it. There's no asset that is attached. They're simply going to give you access if you qualify to the loan, right? Now, once you've got the access to the credit and you use it, it then becomes the debt. And that's where the liability, the future liability now comes in. So I love the home loan process because it paints a beautiful picture. When you start off, you fill in a home loan application, just a credit line. I am looking for 1 million Rand. Then the bank says, sharp, your credit status is immaculate. Your affordability says you can afford to pay this new installment once we actually kick off this credit account, right? And then they say, here you go. Then you go and you purchase the household. The bank then pays the seller. Now, once you've done that, you have now bonded yourself to the bank and to this property purchase that you have made. So it becomes a bond. Love it, right? It's a beautiful picture. You're all of a sudden now being held like this by the bank because they have now bought you a property. They didn't want a property. You wanted a property. And you went straight to the bank and said, you people must give me the 1 million because I want to buy this property. So they bond themselves to you, right? But let's just quickly go back. When you are buying a property, Basically, you are saying, I want this property to now be removed from the ownership of Nicolette to now be in the ownership of my name. So you are Kidiboni, I'm Nicolette. Nicolette currently owns the property. You are saying remove Nicolette's name from the title deed and put my name because I'm buying this property. So that's now the transferal of the property from Nicolette to Auskidiboni, right? So the reason why I say you need to understand those two processes so that you can understand why these fees exist. Then also remember, you may have a check account with this bank. You may have a savings account, an investment account, but you currently don't have a home loan that exists for this specific house. So the bank now needs to create a home loan or a bond account for you, right? We're together. Perfect. Okay, now that we've got that to the side, let's talk a little bit about those 4 fees that you're going to have to pay upfront, which means you're going to have to plan for them. You're going to have to save up for them, or you're going to have to find a way to actually pay for them. And sometimes the ways that people find actually get them into trouble. But let's talk a little bit about what those fees are. The first one is the account initiation fee. Now, the account initiation fee is that, remember I said, you don't have a home loan account, or rather a bond account. So the bank has to set one up for you. And yes, it costs a lot of money. It can cost between 1,250 up to 6,000 Rand at the discretion of the bank. So the different banks have different account amounts. Now, why is it important for you to pay up this fee up front? Because what usually happens is that banks will then add it on to the bond. They will add it on to the bond. Now you are financing a 6,000 or a 4,000 Rand initiation fee over 20 years. It just does not make sense. Even if you were to do the calculation, interest on 4,000 Rand over 20 years at an interest rate even of 11%, which is currently the prime, is just not worth it. You are going to pay that amount, I don't even know how many times. I wish I had my financial calculator to quickly do the calculation for you. But it's a lot of money and it just does not make sense, which is why it is best to rather pay it up front. Now, I know that by the time they tell you about this, they've already told you about the 3 other fees you need to pay, and you're just like, you know what? If I can just get the easy way out, just rather add it onto my bond. I am pleading with you not to do that, because at the end of the day, you end up paying just so much interest over 20 years that is just unnecessary, right? So that fee is to initiate the account, set up the account for you. But don't forget also that you're going to pay an account management fee every month. So you're going to pay the initiation account to initiate the account, but you're going to pay a management account to manage their account. Luckily, the management account, very regulated, right? The second fee you're going to pay is now the transfer duty, right? The transfer duty is a tax amount that you're going to pay to the government. So you're going to pay to SARS. This amount is levied on all properties above 1.1 million. So if you're buying a property that is below 1.1 million, you don't have to worry about this. You're not going to pay it. But if you're purchasing a property that is above 1.1 million, the SARS says you need to pay a transfer duty. This is also attached on a scale based on the price of the property. So it's a sliding scale based on the price of the property, right? The third fee that you're going to pay, now it's these 2 sets of invoices that come from 2 different lawyers. And once again, I have to remind you that these are paid by the buyer, right? So the buyer, the first one they're going to pay is the transfer costs, right? Transfer cost is you're paying a set of lawyers, usually called conveyancers, and they are going to use their expertise and their legal status. They've gone to school to be conveyancers. You're going to pay them to do the administrative work of transferring now the deed from Nicolette to Auskidiboni. Remember, you're the one who wants to buy the property. So they need to transfer it from my name into Kidiboni's name. So it's all the admin work, the drawing up of the contract, those long and onerous, I don't know what the English word is, long contracts that nobody reads. And to be fair, to some extent, they probably look the same, right? But it's a lot of work. And apparently, it's a big headache to deal with the deeds office for these lawyers, right? And I mean, I honestly feel like if you're a conveyancer and you've been doing this for more than 2 years and you still don't have a person in the deeds office, now we party. But I'm sorry, I take that back. I just feel like, brah, in South Africa, you know how to beat the system. You need to make friends, you need to be friendly, you need to, be friendly. Right, anyway, so these are the lawyers that are going to transfer. And remember, at this point, because now you actually are not fully the title deed owner of this property, it has to be put into your name and the bank's name. Up until you actually finish paying off, you hand the bank the last installment, the bank gives you a paid up letter, then only can you actually have your name on the title deed. But for as long as you still owe the bank, bond it to the bank. The bank says, yay, Rena, we didn't want a house, you wanted a house, so we are bonded to you until you finish paying us off. Because remember, we paid the $1 million on your behalf when you wanted the property. Right, so let's talk a little bit about how much you can expect to pay. There is actually a table, and there's also calculators that have now been created because, we live in the world of AI, we live in the world of technology. So people have developed nice transfer cost calculators that you can use, but there are actually legislative tables that you can find that will tell you what the sliding scale looks like based on the property purchase price. So let's go through it. I'm looking at one that is done by PGPS attorneys, right? On a purchase price of 500,000 rand. So if you're buying a property at 500,000 rand, this is what you can expect to pay. In transfer fee, it's 13,910, right? So this is now to the lawyers. Then there's a general disbursement, which is 3,500. I'm not really sure what a general disbursement is. It stays the same for all property prices, so it does not change. Then there's obviously VAT. Now remember, we've got a new budget that's been tabled. It has not been accepted as yet. It's not law yet. But if it does get accepted and it does become law, VAT changes will also change. Now the VAT, obviously, on those two amounts is 2,086 rand 50, right? Then the deeds office has its own fee. On a property of 500,000 rand, the deeds office fee is 850, right? Now, there's no transfer duty on this property. Remember, it's less than 1.1 million rand. So your total that you're looking at is 20,346 rand 50, right? 20,000 that you must have that you need to pay upfront. Mind you, this is now plus the 6,000 or 4,000, however much the initiation fee is, right? No transfer duty because your property is below 1.1 million. However, there's a fourth group of, a fourth invoice that you still need to pay. Now, this is coming from the other lawyers, right? So remember, you've got the transferring lawyers, then you've got what is called the bond registration lawyers. Because your bond now needs to be registered. Because remember, your bond currently is financed by a bank. So you didn't buy cash. So you have a bond that needs to be registered against the title, or the deed rather, of the house, to say that we at the bank are partners to this person on this actual property, right? So we need to register the loan or the bond at the deeds office, so the deeds office also knows that this deed currently is part owned by the two people, but there is a bond that is attached to it. So we are the financier and we come with the bond. Right, going back now to, so this also has its own fee that you are going to pay. But I want to quickly go back to the transferring cost just to give you, again, another indication of what a property would look like if you were paying the transfer duty. Right, so let's look at a property of 1.5 million. If you buy 1.5 million, your transfer fees are 28,990. That's to the lawyers, right? The transferring lawyers, the conveyancer. Then there's that 3,500, which is the disbursement. Then there's VAT, which is at 4,348. Then there is the deeds office. The fee suddenly changes from the 850 at 500,000 now to 1,544. That's the deeds office fee. Then the transfer duty on a 1.5 million rand house is 12,000 rand. If you're buying a property that's 1.5 million, you're going to pay a duty of 12,000 Rand. Then your total transfer cost. So the letter that you're going to get from that lawyer is going to be an invoice with 50,382. Once again, it is an upfront paid cost. So you need to have the money. It must be available. Then you've got bond registration. So let's quickly calculate the bond registration costs, right? So your bond registration calculator, which I've got now in front of you. So let's quickly go to, let's use that 1.5 million purchase price, right? So at 1.5 million purchase price, right? Bond amount is also 1.5, right? Interest rates at 11%, whatever, calculate. So your transfer cost on this bond will be I want the bond registration cost. Oh, so the bond registration on this property, according to Better Bond, will be 35,392. 35,392. Then you've got bond deeds office fees, 1,544, and then you've got things like post, petties, FICA, and other fees at 2,000 Rand. So you can look at paying close to 38,936 that you're going to be paying. Transfer, 50,000. So together, 38 plus 50,000, almost 88,000 Rand that you need to have available as cash for the bond transfer and bond registration. Then we add the 6,000 Rand, remember, for the initiation fee, say 6,000 or 4,000 Rand. So you're looking at close to high of 90,000 that you need to have cash. Now, what usually happens is that young people, professionals, first-time buyers, they usually either have planned and they've saved up this amount of money. They've done proper planning and the money is saved. It's there. They can just pay the lawyers and move on with their life. The second thing that usually happens is that some banks will give you a bond that is more than 100% what you need as per the purchase, the offer to purchase. So the bank will say, we'll give you 120,000 Rand. But again, as noble as that sounds, it means that you are going to now finance this 88,000 Rand or 90,000 Rand. You're going to be financing it over 20 years. So it now forms part of your bond. And if you were to calculate how much interest that is, it is just a lot of money. So my top tip is to rather save up for that money. The third option that young people do, or what I've seen young people do, is that they then use what is called an unsecured credit line to try and pay for this. Now, that's using either an overdraft or using a personal loan or using a credit card. Now, while this may sound very clever, one, you're going to pay on the interest because remember, it's worse when you have it as an unsecured loan because it will then attract a higher interest rate. Because remember, banks give you a higher interest rate on unsecured lending simply because they need to manage the risk. What if you default on it? They may never recoup their money because there's no actual asset that is attached to that loan, right? The third thing that could potentially happen, and you need to be very careful with this, is that let's say you do go and apply for an 88,000 Rand or 90,000 Rand personal loan. The bank, maybe you don't go to the same bank that you applied for your home loan. You go to a different bank or you go to the same bank. You do that. Remember now, at this point, they are still in the process of, you applying for this, so you get a new loan that then gets added to your credit profile. What can potentially happen is that it could change your credit score. And if it changes your credit score, it may alert the bank that, hey, this person is no longer in the same financial standing as they were when you did the calculation of their home loan. In other words, this person has a new fee or a new installment that they need to pay on their budget, which means that their affordability is no longer what they had when you did the calculation on whether or not they can afford this new home loan repayment or this new bond repayment. So it puts your repayment, your affordability, which ultimately equals your repayment at risk. Remember, banks are not allowed to lend you or give you access to a credit line on a home loan if it's going to be 30% more than your actual income, right? So because that's reckless lending. So now, if all of a sudden now you had a disposable income of, say, 20,000 Rand, and you're trying to buy a property of 2 million Rand, the bank says, okay, you have the affordability, but now you've added a new loan because you've now gone to borrow 90,000 Rand in a personal loan, and that personal loan at 80,000 Rand requires you to pay 7,000 a month. All of a sudden now your affordability is no longer 20,000 because you don't have a disposable of 20,000 anymore. You have a disposable of now 13,000. You get what I'm saying? So the bank then does a recalculation and they're like, well, look, now with this new personal loan that you've brought on board, you actually can't afford the 2 million Rand home loan anymore. So now you're sitting with a problem. Now the bank says, we can give you now a bond only of 90%, which means that you must come up now with the extra 10% to be able to pay the seller the full amount that the seller is looking for. And this is why we sometimes say it's best to go and make sure that you are planning your purchase before you actually go and decide to buy a home. It is important. Also, put away a deposit so that not your full affordability needs to be taken into consideration. Because if you put down a deposit of 200,000 Rand, maybe your bond will be around 18,000. So even if it lowers it by the seventh, if you now need to finance the transfer costs, then you get what I'm saying. It looks a bit different. And you can do the calculation. Is it better to put it down the money as a deposit or to use it as my payment for these transfer costs, transfer fees, so that I don't have to put myself in a worse off position by getting an unsecured loan to pay for the transfer fees or the bond registration fees, initiation fees, and transfer duty, if I can just pay it with the money that I was going to intend to pay as a deposit. So when you're purchasing a home, one, it's important to plan. Two is to buy a home you actually can afford without it choking you. Too many people are buying at their ceiling. And when things go wrong, then it's a problem, right? Because things are not always going to go smoothly. But if you do find yourself in a situation where you are given 120% on a bond, ask yourself, does it make sense for you to finance those transfer costs, transfer duty, initiation, and bond registration over 20 years? Does it do the mathematics, guys? It's important to do those mathematics because it will ultimately save you a lot of money. Okay, so I'm going to leave this video there. Please remember, none of my videos constitute as financial advice. If you are looking for financial advice, speak to somebody who's certified and registered with the FSCA. I will see you guys on the next video.